these cities are sinking or at risk of the rising sea levels, and in some cases, both. These places are at serious risk of being submerged in water sooner than we may like to think. Here are the top 10 cities that can't be saved from sinking. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have New Orleans. A NASA study found that New Orleans was sinking at a rate of around 2 inches per year. This may not seem like a lot, but it would be a lot to see a 2-inch change every decade, so considering the fact that this is every year is definitely not a good situation. In fact, some parts of the city are already 15 feet below sea level. The risk is only increased by the city's location on a river delta, which puts it at a higher risk for things like the rising sea and for flooding. Before, the wetlands would have provided some kind of shelter or shield from storm surges, but that has slowly been destroyed by humans, which leaves the city in an even more vulnerable position. It is said that by the year 2100, New Orleans will see the same fate as many of the other cities on this list today. In our number 9 spot today, we have Tybee Island. Tybee Island is located in Georgia, not too far from Savannah. The island is a barrier island, small city, and super popular spot for beach trips as well as sightseeing, with the light station and museum located there. The island, however, is in danger of losing significant portions due to the rising sea levels. It has been calculated that around 30% of livable land on the island will be flooded by 2060. The island isn't the only place at risk though, as Savannah is also on track to be seeing some of the same kinds of flooding. Savannah does happen to be more inland, however, so it might have more time, and while it's possible that a good amount of the city can be saved, there are gorgeous old historical homes on the edge of the water that most likely won't make it another century. In our number 8 spot today, we have Honolulu. This popular Hawaiian destination spot is one of the most at-risk places of being submerged in water due to the rising sea levels. Honolulu is the capital of the Hawaiian state, and I mean, considering the entire state is made up of islands, all of Hawaii really is at stake here. Even a small rise in sea level is noticed, as it is estimated that as little as an inch of rising sea results in losing 8 feet of shoreline. This is a massive issue, as sea levels are being predicted to rise several feet in the next decade alone. 2/3 of the Hawaiian population live on the island that is home to Honolulu, so it is obvious that this is going to cause a lot of major problems for the residents there. In our number 7 spot today, we have Rotterdam. Rotterdam is located in the Netherlands, which is well known for being a leading country when it comes to things like battling floods, and with the threats currently facing the province, they are doing what they can to adapt. The biggest protection they currently have is a dam that closes once storm surges exceed 3 meters in height. At this point, they haven't had to use this dam very much, actually only twice in 22 years, which is pretty good, but experts are saying that might quickly get bumped up to at least once annually. The entire area has faced changes so as to more efficiently mitigate flooding, such as parking garages being turned into emergency reservoirs, removing concrete paving in gardens and neighborhoods to increase water absorption capacity, just really smart moves that continue to help the residents live their lives without the imminent threat of flood. Despite everything that they are doing, however, that is still not enough to contain the expected 1 to 2 meter rise in sea levels in the area by 2100. If this were the case, that would put about 98% of the population underwater by that year. I guess this just goes to show that we can do as much as we want to help prevent floods, but Mother Nature is just more powerful than we are. In our number 6 spot today, we have Tabasco. Tabasco is located in Mexico with a coastline on the Gulf. Tabasco is low and flat, so it has been no stranger to flooding over the years, but the issue is seemingly only growing. The region is covered in both wetlands and forest, so the floods it usually sees are seasonal, but unfortunately, rising sea levels are bringing it to the brink of being submerged. Not only would this be devastating to the variety of life that calls this area home, but it would also threaten the archaeological sites located here, such as some of the Mayan ruins. I briefly mentioned that this area is low, but it is so low that it is only currently 1 meter above sea level, which means that even the smallest rises in the level of the sea have a huge impact. Without some guidelines and a plan to protect this coastal zone, things unfortunately aren't looking too good right now. In our number 5 spot today, we have California. There was a time in California where, while other places were beginning to see the effects of the rising sea levels, California was sitting pretty, enjoying the seemingly endless summer with decades of favorable winds and cooler, calmer waters, but that is rapidly changing due to something that scientists are calling sea level rise suppression. California is known for its lavish homes built as close to the water as one could get, but as it turns out, those with homes more inland probably made a lot better of a decision in the long run. In the last 100 years, the sea level in California rose less than 9 inches, but by the end of this century, it could rise as much as 9 feet. With California mostly focusing on the wildfire and drought effects of climate change, which is of course just as much of an imminent threat, it seems as though the threats of the rising sea levels are slipping through the cracks. The coastline is rapidly eroding, and not only are the multi-million-dollar homes at risk, but so are things like the Pacific Coast Highway and the rail line to San Diego. I mean, take Balboa Island for example. It's barely above sea level as it is, and now they're facing floods even if the tide just simply gets too high. Unfortunately, sometimes these things move quicker than we can even keep up with. In our number 4 spot today, we have Chesapeake. Chesapeake in Virginia is one of the places with the highest threat of being submerged in water, but really all of Virginia is under this threat. Not only are the sea levels rising, but the land of Virginia is sinking at a rate of 1 inch every 10 years. This may not seem like a lot, but these things coupled together just makes for a bad situation. Before, it took 26 years for the sea level in the area to rise 6 inches, but experts are estimating that the next 6 inches will only take 13 years this time. The area is now sometimes even facing flooding when there is no rain because of the pressure from the levels as well as higher tides. The levels are also a problem when facing things like hurricanes, as it can make them even worse, as if a hurricane wasn't already bad enough. It is estimated that what was once every 100-year storm surges will soon turn into once every 10-year surges, or even more frequent by the year 2050, which is approaching rapidly and will only further progress the issues the area is seeing. In our number 3 spot today, we have Alexandria. Alexandria is a Mediterranean port city that is located in Egypt, and it is the 7th largest city in Africa. The city is known for its historical value, as it is said to have been founded by Alexander the Great, and it once was connected to a small island called Pharos. Pharos is relevant because it once housed a lighthouse that was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This area was thought to be extremely promising because of its coastal location, and it proved to be just that, as well as an important industrial center because of its natural gas and oil pipelines, but now some of the things that once made it so enticing might be what brings it to its demise. The beaches of Alexandria have already been seen disappearing because of the rising sea levels. There have been estimations that the Mediterranean Sea will see rises of around 2 feet by 2100. This may not be the largest sea level rise that we have talked about today, but considering the fact that this is an area where the rising sea has already affected those who reside there, who knows what 2 more feet is going to do. In our number 2 spot today, we have Venice. Scientists have warned that if something doesn't change soon, Venice is on track to be submerged in water by 2100, and this is because the Mediterranean Sea is on the rise and is predicted to see a growth of over 4 feet in the next century, which would prove to be devastating to this coastal city. Not only has it been said for years that Venice is sinking, but the city has also been seeing an increase of some of the worst floods in its history, which surely cannot be a good sign. Italy has been doing work to try and combat the frequent flooding by doing things like building flood barriers, but while they were supposed to be finished a decade ago, they still aren't done, and Venice is seeing the effects of that delay. Not only is the city and its residents at risk, but the historical architecture of the city is also facing some troubles, even now. During the worst time in the city for flooding, the water can sometimes be seen as high as 4 feet, which has left the city no choice but to build catwalks so that people can still get around the city without having to swim to work. In our number 1 spot today, we have Houston. Houston, Texas is unlike a lot of the others on this list today, as it is not a coastal city, and the rising sea level alone certainly isn't enough to cause it to disappear, but it is another one of those cities that is sinking at a rate of around 2 inches per year. The main reason for this is due to excessive groundwater pumping. This process leads to a change in pressure and volume, which in turn causes the land to sink. The sinking land only makes the city more susceptible to flooding, similar to what was experienced during Hurricane Harvey. Unfortunately, scientists are only expecting an increase in storms and hurricanes, and that, coupled with the sinking land, is a perfectly horrible recipe for the city to be underwater sooner rather than later. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye!